It's showtime.
It's the pre-party with J. Cal.
We are professional wrestling.
I'm building an alliance.
You are tuned into
the absolute top of the mountain, the ultimate professional wrestling.
Alliance-wrestling.com.
Shouldn't be muted. How about now? Can you hear me now? Terrific. What is up, guys? Welcome to another episode of the Pre-Party presented by Alliance-Wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. I'm your host, J. Cal, and if there isn't some sort of hiccup on this show, then of course it wouldn't be presented by TheAllianceBlog. So I'm riding a wave of positivity. I'm pumped. I'm hyped up. I'm catching feelings, guys. Those boys over at the NWA podcast, This is the NWA, have been so kind to your boy J. Cal. If you like the logo, if you like the ink, hey, it's Will Daly, Will Martin for designing the thumbnail, a couple of graphics for me. Just a great dude, and obviously did a great job, and certainly makes me feel welcomed in this NWA family, makes me feel a part of the team. I often joke that we are all the same, of this NWA fam, we're all one, and it's real cooperation, the teamwork, the synergy between our two shows, and of course I hope that continues to grow. I know I'm seeing a lot of people who just a couple of weeks ago didn't even know about this show who are now watching and a part of it because of the NWA pod. And I encourage all of you guys to check them out as well. You'll even see right now we're streaming their a link to their merchandise page with the hashtag NWAFam. Pick up some merchandise from them. I picked up mine, and I can't wait to get it so you could see me represent it here on this video. But I'm already jumping on your guys' comments. Lamb is an angel. Thank you, Lamb. Lamb mentions that you can also check me out on Spotify. If you prefer to listen to J. Cal instead of look at J. Cal, now I'm talking in third person. Gosh, what a prick. Visit Spotify or Google or Apple and just search at the Alliance Blog. You'll find us there. Yeah, I know there was no audio, guys. Thank you for helping me out with that because I didn't know, but now I know. Stan says the pre-party is presented by All Japan Pro Wrestling. I mean, either that or Monster, right? Have you guys had the Monster Ultra Rosa? I don't think it supports Thunder Rosa, but it's delicious. Oh, and Wrestling with MMA won a Zicky Dice TV shirt. So we're looking to do more things on Twitch, and I have a couple of things lined up we're working on. I think you guys are really going to enjoy it, especially if you're fans of the junior heavyweight division of the NWA. We'll talk more about that at a later date, but we're going to start producing more content specific to Twitch. especially because, we have there's this great new game coming out. I'm sure you guys have heard of it, from Retro Studios, Retromania. I plan to be playing that and talking about the NWA while I use Colt Cabana to whoop on Nick Aldis to win that 10 pounds of gold. But I don't want to keep you guys waiting. Let's talk about the NWA. If you do like this video, make sure you give it a thumbs up, hit subscribe, leave a comment. Comments are especially important because it shows that you're engaging your audience, and your audience is engaging you. So if you like this video, please leave a comment. If you don't like it, tell me why you didn't like it. If you're going to give me a thumbs down, because I've had a few of those, hey, that's cool, man. I want to get better. Tell me what I need to do to improve. And don't say, have my microphone working when I come on, because I already know that. Jeez. So, one of the cool things that happened this week, I think is, with Nick Aldis. I mean, look, the NWA's kind of been in a stalling pattern, waiting to see what's next. But Nick Aldis, a man who is not going to wait for anyone, has went ahead and got himself a licensing deal with Chelsea Toys, which I believe is UK based. Well, I know they're UK based because when I ordered my action figure, I know it's coming from the UK, and the shipping is about $20. But I think it's really cool that our World's Heavyweight Champion went out and got this deal to again license his image for Chelsea Toys. Chelsea Toys is, from what I understand, a new toy company. But from what I understand, these are going to be like a throwback to the Hasbro toys. Now, I don't have any of the Hasbro toys. I mean, I go old school, fellas. I've got Ric Flair and the AWA Remco. I've got the, I think this was a Galoob. Yeah, I think it was Galoob. Also a Nature Boy Ric Flair, for you guys on Instagram. So to me, I'm kind of excited just to see what the overall quality is. As a collector, as a fan of the NWA, I felt like it was my obligation to buy these action figures, which I think says a lot about the brand, because I look at things from a business perspective as well as a fan. And as a fan, I feel like I am not doing my due diligence if I don't buy this action figure. And I think that's a great way for the NWA to have its fans to feel obligated to buy an action figure. So, I mean, I think it's pretty cool. And again, it's one of those things where I think, this could turn into something bigger for the NWA. I mean, if Chelsea Toys does a good job producing these, why not Eli Drake? Why not Thunder Rosa? Why not James Storm? Why not Zicky Dice? Why not Aaron Stevens or the question mark? And speaking of Zicky Dice, and I was going to get into this a little bit later, but, it certainly feels like a predicament with Zicky Dice because, well, Zicky still, I mean, apparently he's still under contract, right? I mean, has anyone else heard differently? My screen is acting silly here. Forgive me for a second. If I could just get my screen to work, that'd be great. And transition. This is still your reigning TV champion. Now, like I said, he has had one title defense back in March. But that was then, and this is now. The TV title has kind of, just like all the other belts, remained stagnant. So what does that mean for the future of the NWA? I honestly, I don't know. What does that mean for the future of Zicky Dice? Again, I really don't know. Zicky Dice is certainly an interesting character and has brought a lot to the NWA. Just like Wrestling with MMA mentioned, he's excited to get a Zicky Dice TV shirt. But what's next? I mean, we really don't know. And the interesting thing about it is no one's really talking about it. Now, there was that the Fightful report that Zicky Dice was asked for his release, was granted his release, but then there was nothing from the NWA. And now whenever anyone brings it up to Zicky Dice, he's saying he's still champion and that there's been no change. He even went as far to say is what dirt sheet, where do I work now according to the dirt sheets? And so it's kind of interesting that they still haven't really addressed that. Now, with that being said, I don't recall the NWA making much ado about Ricky Starks' departure either, where Ricky Starks announced it on a podcast, but the NWA really didn't follow up with it. So we'll see how that goes. Robert says, hopefully bite the bullet and do some empty arena shows. Well, it's funny you say that, Robert, because I was just going to get to that. In fact, I wasn't going to get to it, but our World's Heavyweight Champion is.
Figuring out some empty arena stuff because we realized that, at this point, it's kind of unavoidable. We had hoped, I think, in the beginning that we might be able to kind of tread water, with some other content and some different things to keep our fans interested and engaged. And now I think we've realized, okay, they want to see us wrestle because this is the NWA. They want to see that.
Riveting stuff, right? That was from the High Spots NWA auction. Now, let's be honest, that footage was not from the auction. I shot that when I was in China, and I've been sitting on it, and I always like to use whatever footage I have, so that's why you saw that. But I think it's pretty cool that the NWA is starting to get to that point. The material, the content that they were creating, which to me, again, I was never the biggest fan of Carneyland, but I did love all of the podcast. What's Causing All This, the Eli Drake Show, Inside the NWA, NWA Girl Power, all of these shows I felt really brought something special and unique, an inside look to the going-ons of the National Wrestling Alliance, an inside look at Eli Drake, an inside look at Nick Aldis, and I thought that was very, very good and very, very entertaining, but it's not wrestling. And at the end of the day, like the video says, we want wrestling. And with so many places doing shows now where they're empty arenas, like, so we all know the WWE's been doing it, and of course they've had some ill side effects, right? A couple of COVID-19 cases being reported. Well, more than a couple. I think the last reported number was 30. AEW has been running theirs, and seemingly no one has had issues with COVID-19 thus far. We know that Championship Wrestling from Hollywood's United Wrestling Network recently taped a show for New Japan, the Lions Den Break, which features up-and-coming New Japan of USA talents, along with some of the older established New Japan American wrestlers interacting. So the empty arena shows, they're going to happen. At some point, we are going to take that next step from being closed off and then getting back to some sense of normalcy because of this virus. Of course, look, baseball's coming back, the NBA's coming back. There's still plans for the NFL. So I do believe that all of this is going to play a pivotal role. The NWA needs to come back, and guys, what better place than here, or the Ocean View Pavilion in Hollywood, California, or the GPBS Studios. Oh, I had an extra S on there. Anyways, what I'm trying to get at is that I think now would be a good time. And honestly, no one's been more affected by this than our World's Heavyweight Champion. In March, he was supposed to wrestle against Carlito in the World Wrestling Council. Now, that's one of the biggest wrestling promotions in Puerto Rico. In fact, they have two very big promotions, IWA Puerto Rico and WWC. Now, WWC is, it's operated by the Colones. Carlito, his father, Carlos Colon, and it's a family affair. But this match was kind of billed as an NWA versus a WWE match because of Carlito's tenure with the WWE, and it was being covered by Super Luchas, which is the Lucha magazine in Mexico, It was being covered, in, of course, in a lot of the Spanish-speaking countries because the WWC creates content that goes for all Spanish-speaking countries. So this was a big deal, and this was going to help establish. It was really going to help establish 2020 for our World's Heavyweight Champion. Of course, the match was scheduled that he was supposed to face Marty Scurll at Crockett Cup. Now, that doesn't seem like that's going to happen anytime soon. He was also supposed to face another challenge in April, Facade, at Remix Pro, and I believe that's I want to say that's in Virginia, West Virginia. But the champ hasn't been sitting idly by. I mean, he was here, before COVID-19, he was defending at Power, but there were plans for him to take the title on the road, to be that world's traveling champion that we've all expected him to be. Oh yes, and Lamb brings up at the Ring of Honor Supercard event that he was supposed, our world's heavyweight champion, the national treasure Nick Aldis, was supposed to face PCO. Again, none of these happened. So I mean, it clearly, you could see the frustration from everyone involved about why these matches aren't happening. And the interesting thing that's been happening too is your boy Eddie Kingston. Eddie Kingston has said some pretty controversial things in the past. I mean, even recently on Inside the NWA, he made overtures at the World's Heavyweight Champion. But this weekend, Eddie Kingston, someone handed Eddie Kingston a microphone, and it was either the greatest thing you've ever seen or the worst thing you've ever seen, depending on how you feel about Eddie. But, instead of just talking about Eddie, let's hear what Nick Aldis has to say about Eddie Kingston, if this works right. Is it going to work? There it is. Oh, that's not supposed to happen.
You hear him say, it's coming from here. No, he is as authentic as anybody you'll see in the business. His delivery is second to none. I mean, he is absolutely, in my opinion, in the conversation for the best promo in the entire business. It's certainly one of the most effective, and ultimately, best is a subjective thing. But effectiveness, I think it's pretty hard to argue that he's right up there with anyone, because when he talks, you listen. And to me, it's sometimes I think a lot of guys get sucked into this idea of let's do what a version of a good promo is supposed to be. Eddie Kingston ain't working like that. He's talking. That's just who he is, 24/7. It's just. Here's the thing with Eddie Kingston.
The audio broke up. Just my luck, right? Well, essentially what was said was Eddie Kingston is authentic. And I mean, let's be honest, the NWA has been predicated on authenticity. Nick Aldis has said from day one that this is the authentic era. Nobody is more authentic than Eddie Kingston, and is what you should have heard in that promo from Nick Aldis. Again, that was from the High Spots auction on Thursday, last Thursday, is that Nick Aldis was very cavalier in his approach with Eddie Kingston, basically praising him and his promo abilities. In fact, he mentioned that they have a murder's row of promo guys, and he included himself along with Eli Drake and James Storm and Tim Storm, and then got to Eddie Kingston and talked about, again, there's no script there. This isn't a character. That is Eddie Kingston. And so Eddie Kingston does what Eddie Kingston does. And, he had this to say, among other things, about our world's heavyweight champion.
Oh.
Well, the audio, I guess, isn't working, but I'll give you the gist of it. Eddie Kingston wants a shot at Nick Aldis. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys already saw this video. It was making the rounds on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And Kingston says that, he'll face the world's heavyweight champion in ICW. He'll face him over there where the horses are at. But the most important thing he says right here at the end of the match is that he's going to take that title and take it to All Japan Pro Wrestling. Now, could you imagine if All Japan Pro Wrestling and the NWA started to work together again? It's been years since an NWA title, official NWA title, has been defended in Japan. I mean, well, the Triple Crown itself is made up of NWA titles, the NWA International Heavyweight Championship. And, I mean, could you imagine? Now, Nick Aldis isn't a stranger to Japan. I mean, he's worked for Pro Wrestling Noah. He's a former tag team champion with Samoa Joe for Pro Wrestling Noah. He did hold the New Japan Pro Wrestling tag titles, or excuse me, the IWGP tag team titles. But, that was part of the British invasion. But those titles were kind of, well, I mean, it was a TNA thing. They never went to Japan. They never defended them in Japan. But Nick Aldis is an international brand. I mean, he's a former Ring Ka King heavyweight champion. He's been the Impact heavyweight champion, the Global Force Wrestling heavyweight champion, and of course, our two-time NWA Worlds Heavyweight Champion, the Real World's Champion. But think about him in the ring. I mean, let's not even put him in the ring with the number one guy. Let's put him in the ring with a former champion. How about Joe Doring? Or what about Zeus? Or what about their ace, Kento Miyahara? Did I say that right, Stan? Because I really was practicing it. Kento Miyahara? What if it was against this dude? The reigning Triple Crown champion, Suwana. I mean, there's all kinds of things that could happen with the NWA. There's all kinds of opportunity for the National Wrestling Alliance, whether it be Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, whether it be, working with New Japan USA, whether it be getting back in their own studios and doing Power in front of an empty arena. The NWA, as Nick Aldis said, is open for business, and they need to get back to wrestling because it's the NWA, damn it. So, of course, that's got to feel good if you're a fan of the NWA, because that's what we want. That's what we all want, is a return to form. We want to see the NWA Power return. We want to see NWA 10 pounds of gold. I mean, at this point, we could even go for an NWA showcase. Bring out Dave Marquez's library from the past 25 years and give me Scrap Iron Adam Pearce versus Colt Boom Boom Cabana, or Adam Pearce versus, I don't know, Brent Albright. The NWA has an opportunity, guys. They can retell their story. I firmly believe that the NWA has not gotten anywhere close to being over. I firmly believe that the NWA is going nowhere. I do believe the NWA is prime to have a huge comeback. Of course, a wise man said, all your minor setbacks push you for a major comeback, and I do believe the NWA is due for a major comeback. I mean, I find it very interesting. Friend of the show, Gary Horn of This is the NWA podcast, tweeted a video. If you guys aren't following Gary, he's at Gary Horn. I think that's his Twitter name. Follow him if you're not. In fact, follow all those guys. Follow Hey Willits Daily. Follow Dr. Robert Stinson. I retweet all their stuff as much as I can, so if you guys are following me, you should be following them. And Gary posted a great video where Sting won the NWA Worlds Heavyweight Championship. At that point, it might have been WCW. It was 1990, so yeah, it was probably the WCW. It was the big gold belt. It was this one that you see right here on my T-shirt here. And he won it with the inside cradle, and it was a shock, and the crowd went wild. There were the dudes with attitude ringside celebrating, and the video was eerily similar to how Cody defeated Nick at All In. Keep in mind, and this was what Gary said, history has no twin. Cody retweeted that, and Cody talked about how that match that night really did push AEW forward, but don't forget how much it pushed the NWA forward. And I'm not saying that match can't happen again. I firmly believe that match happens again. But that's enough of me. That's enough of me talking. Let's see what you guys are saying, because I pride myself on trying to be interactive. I'm following suit with the NWA pod. This is the NWA podcast, guys. Gary, Robert, Will. Again, if you hear me speaking highly of them, it's because there's a lot of admiration and respect for those guys. I hope you guys understand that. So let's see what you guys have been saying. And number one, Chris Drummond says the Rock and Roll Express needs toys. I mean, I think that would sell for sure. Not by me, but I'm sure people would buy it. I mean, they're icons. They're legends. I won't take that away from them. Stan says, might as well do a no-crowd show. Everybody else is doing it besides Ring of Honor. Yes. Yeah. We were all on the same page. You guys were saying the same thing. It's really time for the champions to put up their titles. Terry, are you asking for them to defend the belts or to hand the belts over? Because I don't think any of the champions are willing to do that yet. I mean, we are in a pandemic, so I think special circumstances allow for the NWA to not rush into stripping any champions. Of course, if a particular wrestler leaves the alliance, then I have no problem with them being stripped of their titles, but I would prefer a one-on-one match in the ring. I'd prefer to see guys get theirs in the ring. There's been a handful of times where the 10 pounds of gold has changed hands via vacancy, and it's always the worst. It messes up with continuity. I just don't like it. And I feel that way about all the titles. I hate seeing titles vacated. I firmly believe that if you were able to do the job to get the belt, you're able to do the job to lose the belt. So, more of your comments. Dave Scooby. Dave is also the man responsible for the intro audio. If you guys enjoy that, give Dave a thumbs up because he's the one that came up with that. Thanks again for that, Dave. The MLB is offering fans a use of cardboard cutouts. Take a picture of yourself, send it in, pay to have your picture made into a cutout, and they have it placed in the stands. Maybe the NWA can do this. I mean, I've heard worse ideas. I mean, that's clever as hell. It's another revenue stream, plus it gives the appearance that there's people in the show. I'm all about it. Let's do it. Kerouac says, Aldis and company have to work somewhere soon. Safety first, but the wrestling world has kept going for better or for worse. You're right, man. You're absolutely right. And Kerouac got name dropped on the auction, on the High Spots auction. I don't know if you guys saw that, but as I move here to the left, my left, you'll see the print that Kerouac did. Thanks again, Kerouac, for that. I think it looks awesome. And then Stan says he would love to see the title back in the Korakuen Hall. Am I saying that right? I'm so bad with Japanese names. I need to have Stan just proofread my script here. Yeah, I do believe that the NWA, I mean, look, the 10 pounds of gold, what's kept the NWA ball rolling is that belt has never ceased to exist. Now, there's been times where, again, a champion has changed hands via vacancy. There's been times where the NWA title has gone dormant, but never, oh man, my camera went out. I need to get better at that too. But there's never been a time in history where the NWA title didn't exist from 1948 to the present. There's something to be said about that. The WCW World title, gone. History. The ECW World title, gone. The AWA World title, no more. And we could talk about countless other wrestling promotions throughout the years where their main prize is a relic, is sitting on somebody's mantle, somebody's office. But the 10 pounds of gold, the world's heavyweight champion, the real world's champion, the legacy of Lou Thez, Ric Flair, Harley Race, Jack Briscoe, Scrap Iron Adam Pearce, Sting, Jeff Jarrett, Raven. That lineage is still intact, my friends. That belt still exists. And as long as it's defended anywhere in the world, that championship still is alive, and that means the NWA is alive. Whether it was in by God, West Virginia, in front of 12 fans at a bowling alley turned pro wrestling venue, whether it was in championship wrestling from Hollywood in front of 400 people at a TV taping, whether it was in New Japan Pro Wrestling, the 10 pounds of gold has continued to survive, and it will, because it's legacy, it's history. There's a reason why Billy Corgan purchased the NWA. It wasn't because it was readily available. It wasn't because Bruce Tharpe was easy to deal with. It's because the NWA had value, much, much greater than anyone realized at the time. More of your comments. Terry says he would like to see a match between Aldis and Watts. I mean, there's measuring sticks, right? There's I can't think of the word, but there's measuring sticks from pro wrestling, right? Eric Watts about 10 years ago challenged Scrap Iron Adam Pearce for the NWA Worlds Heavyweight Championship, and Watts would be the first one to tell you that he wasn't nearly as good then as he is now. But yeah, I would love to see Watts challenge for the World's Heavyweight Championship. 10 years ago, Eli Drake challenged for that World's Heavyweight Championship. And Eli Drake has only gotten better. I would like to see Eli Drake challenge for that World's Heavyweight Championship. Oh, Kerouac says, and bring back Into the Fire. I'm not against it. I'm not against it at all. On our Instagram, Lamb says the AWA World title is actually defended in 01 as 01 World title for whatever reason. We'll see, and I want to address that because this is one of the biggest grifts in the history of pro wrestling, one of the biggest cons. And I'm talking about Dale Gogner, not Gagne. He wasn't a relative. In fact, he legally changed his name so he could kind of fool people into believing that he in some way somehow represented the AWA. Apparently he bought the trademarks in bankruptcy court, but he didn't. The WWE purchased those, and apparently he ran all over the United States as the AWA, with each show getting a cease and desist from the WWE. Then Dale Gagne went to Japan and somehow sold them on the fact that this was the AWA. It wasn't, guys. It wasn't. And I really think the AWA, or 01 was a sucker for ever believing it either. I mean, I get it. I know that Japanese wrestling is rich with history and tradition, but they got grifted on this one. They got hook, line, and sinkered. Conned is the word. Chris Drummond says, with Evolve closing, I would raid that Fed and shine. Yeah, I mean, so we just saw the WWE shed a lot of payroll in the last 90 days. Due to COVID, due to Vince's pockets not being fat enough, whatever it is, the WWE cut a lot of jobs. And, Cream has a way of rising to the top. Evolve filed for bankruptcy. It's rumored that the WWE has purchased it, as well as some of the contracts. We'll see how that turnover works, how much of that talent they'll actually keep. But yeah, if there's talented people out there, I really hope that they get opportunities with places like MLW and the NWA. I mean, look, MLW isn't running live shows either, and their talent is also being poached. Flying Brian Jr. is going to be on AEW. So, I mean, they already lost MJF, so I wouldn't be surprised if they lose more guys. I know Filthy Tom Lawler's now working with New Japan Pro Wrestling, so again, it's not surprising, but you're going to see some transition in more than just the NWA, in wrestling in general. But cream always finds a way to rise to the top, guys. It always does. And hopefully, Nick Aldis will be waiting for them to defend the 10 pounds of gold. Robert Stinson says, there's a big opportunity still to redeem this year if we can work out some empty arena matches with Kingston, James Storms, and perhaps Skrull. Right, and exactly, and that's one thing I was trying to get to that I kind of lost my train of thought there. Eddie Kingston is a promo. Eddie Kingston can sell you on a pro wrestling match. Nick Aldis is a promo guy. He can sell you on a match. Promos between those two could get me to buy a pay-per-view. I mean, I'll tell you right now, I'd buy it just because. But for somebody who's on the fence, to hear the passion from Nick Aldis and what the NWA means to him, and the passion that Eddie Kingston has, that guy wants to take our title, our 10 pounds of gold, and take it to All Japan Pro Wrestling and defend it in All Japan. You guys, this is a call to arms, man. He wants your belt, your 10 pounds of gold. Promos alone would sell that match, guys. Promos alone. Chris Drummond says 0-1 is dead, and yeah, with some of the decisions that 0-1 has made over the years, I wouldn't be surprised. Stan says just pull the trigger and give the title to Kingston. You know, we had this talk, and not me, the fellows over at This Is the NWA podcast had this talk about what it would take to take the belt off of our World's Heavyweight Champion, Nick Aldis. And, you know, Gary had mentioned that he thought it would have to be someone that could push the NWA forward. To hell with that, man. And no disrespect to my boy Gary, but to hell with that. I need someone that's going to keep creativity going. I need someone that's going to keep me invested in the product right now. I don't need a guy that's going to carry the company 20 years in the future. I need a guy who's going to bring audience back to the NWA. Because whether you guys want to believe it or not, Carneyland was not power. Carneyland was not going to keep the dedicated NWA fan to that Tuesday night time slot. We need wrestling. NWA fans need wrestling. Now I get it. There are people like me, like This Is the NWA guys, like a lot of you that are in the chat room right now, that loved Carneyland, that loved the podcast, and were completely fine with that. But at some point, action needs to happen. Wrestling needs to return. Tried and True Pro Wrestling in Tennessee, Ricky Morton School in Tennessee, Championship Wrestling from Hollywood, and Hollywood. The Public Broadcasting Studios in Georgia. We need to see the NWA in action. And now Chris Drummond brings up a point. The problem with Eddie is, will the casual fans care about him? Yeah, I get what you're saying. He doesn't have $1 million body. He's not the world's greatest wrestler either. But he can cut a promo. And what you seem to forget is that the best time in wrestling is when the best promos were happening. When guys are reading scripts, that's garbage. That's why you don't watch WWE anymore. That's why you're looking for an alternative. That's why you're watching MLW. That's why you're watching the NWA. That's why you're giving AEW a chance, because you're tired of those scripted promos. You're tired of the same old catchphrases. And if you smell what I'm cooking, Eddie Kingston is authentic. Eddie Kingston is real. Eddie Kingston, I mean, in some cases is a liability. You don't know what Eddie Kingston's going to say. You have no clue what Eddie Kingston's going to say. You don't know what he's going to do, man. He's a wild card that needs to be dealt with. And if Eddie Kingston is given the opportunity to go promo for promo with Nick Aldis, people are going to pay attention. And sure, it might not be that traditional NWA fan base. Maybe it's the hanger-ons from Chikara. Maybe it's the guys who used to watch CZW. Maybe it's the guys that watch the IWA Mid-South. Maybe it's the guys that watch Jersey All Pro Wrestling. But if Eddie Kingston is representing your company, or at least a prime top challenge, I mean, he said it best. He didn't go to acting school. He went to fighting school. He's authentic. When you watch an Eddie Kingston promo, you're not sure what you're going to get. That's why he's gold. And again, when you take two guys who can cut promos like Kingston and Aldis, I mean, wouldn't you like to see Nick Aldis a little bit uncomfortable with what Eddie Kingston's going to do? Maybe Eddie Kingston comes out with a knife. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know. So more of your comments. Stan says that Eddie Kingston is a believable champion. I mean, I buy him. I said it before. His first run with NWA Power was lackluster. He was majority of the time teaming with Homicide, who was hurt. They put him in an angle with Pope, and I really didn't think it was going to go anywhere, and it didn't go anywhere. I mean, what was the payoff? That he was going to get his hands on the Pope? The Pope isn't a wrestler anymore. The Pope is a manager. So what was it going to be? Was the Pope going to bring in Jack Stane, or are we going to get a Jack Stane-Kingston feud? I mean, that would have been cool. But I don't see that happening either. But Eddie Kingston, Nick Aldis, now you're on to something. I mean, they gave Nick Aldis some of the best opponents he could have leading up to this point in history right now. I mean, Tim Storm to open up NWA Power primo. Tim Storm versus Ricky Starks in a non-title match. I mean, I don't think that Nick Aldis looked bad taking a time limit draw to the future TV champion. Nick Aldis versus Ricky Morton just showed you how hard of a worker that Nick Aldis is. Nick Aldis versus Flip Gordon. Again, the champion is always rising to the top. The champion versus James Storm. Again, the champion rises to the top. We would have seen a great match between Nick Aldis and Marty Scurll. Who knows if we'll ever get that. But I think to get fans back to the NWA, Eddie Kingston is money. And just so you guys know, it wasn't just NWA fans that were retweeting that video. And sure, he called out Zack Sabre Jr., and sure, he called out Cody Rhodes. But the point remains, he called out Nick Aldis. And Nick Aldis agreed to fight him. This match needs to happen. And I don't care if it happens in Ricky Morton's school. I don't care if it happens in Hollywood. I don't care if it happens in Georgia. I don't care if it happens in Kurika Hall for All Japan Pro Wrestling. What I want to see is that match happen, period. Period. So more of your comments. Chris Drummond asked if you'd bring in Low-Ki, and I would say no, not at all. Not at all, because Low-Ki was a very selfish person. And the NWA is about continuity, teamwork, synergy. They're all counting on each other. I would not bring in Low-Ki. I don't think the NWA could control him. Just like I wouldn't bring in Austin Aries. Both of them are uber talented. Do not get me wrong. They're fantastic wrestlers. And maybe a one-off match would be a great thing. But I don't see long-term either one of those guys being a good mix or good deal for the NWA. Robert Stinson says, the build-up to the subsequent feud will be epic and fabulous for the NWA, but when the dust settles, all this will remain as the Legacy World Champion. And that's the beauty of it, right, Dr. Robert? That's the beauty of it, because whether win, lose, or draw, you know who's going to walk away happy is the fans, because they're going to get those killer promos. They're going to get a war in the ring. And let's not forget, I mean, we know that Nick Aldis is a great wrestler. We know he wrestles inside that ring, but don't forget that feud with Cody Rhodes that spilled all over the Nashville Fairgrounds into the popcorn vendors. Let's not forget how him and Cody battled throughout the crowd at the 70th anniversary show. It's not beyond Nick Aldis to bleed. It's not beyond Nick Aldis to fight. Yes, he's a wrestler. Yes, he's a grappler, as Eddie Kingston would say, but I mean, he's not above fighting. Fisticuffs. pugilism, whatever you want to say. Nick Aldis is going to be able to do just fine with Eddie Kingston. He'll be all right. Nick Aldis will do just fine in a match with Eddie Kingston. And honestly, whoever walks away the victor is going to have earned that title. And again, that's a match that's going to bring fans back to the NWA. If you can think of a better match, leave it in the comments below. If you're watching live, tell me what it is right now. If you're watching this later, leave it in the comments. Tell me what match sounds better to you than Nick Aldis versus Eddie Kingston. More of your comments. Chris Drummond says, Big Chris Dog says, what about Bully Ray? See, that's interesting, right? I mean, there's a connection there through Dave LaGreca and the Busted Open Radio. I mean, those guys have been very kind to the NWA. Bully Ray said some very nice things about Nick Aldis. I mean, I wouldn't have a problem with that at all. He's not the same wrestler he was 10 years ago. Is he past his prime? Sure. Could he still get a good match out of him? Sure. I wouldn't hate that. I wouldn't hate that at all. Lamb agrees. Bully Ray would be interesting. I mean, we had Scott Steiner on the NWA. So, yeah, exactly. Exactly. What would be the difference? What would be the difference with Nick Aldis and... what would be the difference with Bully Ray versus Scott Steiner? Now, I have to say this because All Japan Stan here in the show, he brings up an excellent point. It caught me off guard. But Eddie Kingston is a big fan of All Japan Pro Wrestling and even just tweeted out, without the 4 pillars, I wouldn't be wrestling now. The 4 pillars being Mitsuhara Misawa, Kenta Kobashi. I'm terrible at name guys, so I don't want to butcher them. But essentially, without All Japan Pro Wrestling, there wouldn't be an Eddie Kingston. So I don't know if Eddie Kingston is playing politics and trying to warm All Japan up to a visit. Maybe they're interested. Maybe there's talk that we don't even know about. I don't know. I don't want to pretend like I know. I just want to see the best wrestling I can see. And I want to see the NWA put on the best matches they can put on. So we'll see. Willie Bowen said he wanted Nick Aldis versus Phil Shatter. Of course, Phil Shatter still wrestling for WWE NXT as Jackson Riker. So I don't think you'll see that match anytime soon. Willie Bowen also says that he wants to see Nick Aldis versus Jade. I don't know who Jade is, so I'm sorry, you'll have to enlighten me. Chris Drummond says, my issue with the NWA is the lack of attention of the other titles. Chris, I mean, brother, right now the NWA has no focus, no attention. There hasn't been any focus of anything, not even on the 10 pounds of gold. The TV title was getting a lot of praise and a lot of focus with the Lucky 7 rules that they had for that. Of course, Aaron Stevens. If you were at the NWA TV taping, the Power taping, Stevens cut this really good promo about the championship. I didn't see it live. I've only heard other people talk about it. Gary Horn spoke about it on the This Is the NWA podcast and really emphasized how much that title meant to Aaron Stevens and why he does what he does. And if that promo ever sees the air, if it ever gets aired on Power or whatever's next for the NWA, it really advances the character of Aaron Stevens. So we'll see, man. We'll see. I wouldn't cut any of those titles out. I think, or count any of them out, I should say. When the NWA returns, I think you'll see the proper vehicles for each of those title belts being utilized. Stan told me to check my Facebook. I did. Thanks, Stan. Stan's going to direct the show next week. Willie Bowen at... Oh, Josephus. Aha, Josephus versus Nick Aldis. I mean, they haven't had that one-on-one match. I don't know if you're going to see that again. Wins and losses, it's kind of funny, right? Because we're just talking about how great of a matchup it would be for Eddie Kingston to take on Nick Aldis. But similarly, you know, Josephus hasn't had the best win-loss record in the NWA either. I mean, he is a former NWA Southern Heavyweight Champion with Saul when they were members of the NWA. But it's been a while since he's been that impactful in the NWA. And, of course, he was kind of made to be mocked at the 70th anniversary show. So who knows what's next for Josephus. Getting a title shot, I don't foresee it, but you never know. Chris Drummond suggested Nick Aldis versus Joe Henning, and I think that would be great. I think it would be awesome to see Joe Henning make his way to the NWA. Here's a guy whose stock was really kind of devalued by how the WWE used him, where somebody like Jon Moxley, who was treated as one of the top stars of the WWE when he was there, goes to AEW, gets the all-star treatment. You know, Joe Henning never got that. So I don't know what you'll see when Joe Henning, where he's going to end up next. Maybe MLW, maybe the NWA. Maybe he just goes to All Japan. Maybe he retires. I'm not sure. But I hope to see him as part of the NWA and see what he's capable of doing. A third-generation wrestler. Typically, third-generation wrestlers are good at what they do. Chris Drummond says he thinks that Aldis and Wagner would sell tickets. Yeah, man, 100%. 100%. I firmly believe that, you know, these legends of Lucha Libre, Blue Demon Jr., El Hijo de Santo, depending on where that's at, I mean, those matches could draw tremendously. Now, what is that going to do for the NWA? Well, not a lot in the United States. In Mexico, it could do gangbusters. Dr. Wagner Jr., I mean, he certainly could draw. I don't know what kind of gate you would get with Dr. Wagner Jr. and Nick Aldis versus what you're paying him to be on your show, but it might be worth it. Wrestling with MMA says Zicky had some interesting things to say on his Twitch stream today. What did he say? What did Zicky Dice say? I mean, I'm one of those guys that's hoping that Zicky Dice sticks around. I want to see Zicky Dice in the NWA going forward. I think he fits. The gimmick is a little silly, sure, but he's committed to that gimmick, and he really pushes that button. Whether you love him or hate him, he is one of the guys that ultimately I think the NWA can really benefit from pushing. And then more of your comments. Willie wants to see the NWA Pro Wrestling and All Japan cross-promote matches. Now, Willie, when you say NWA Pro Wrestling, do you mean the National Wrestling Alliance, or do you mean Championship Wrestling from Hollywood? Because Championship Wrestling from Hollywood was the evolved form of NWA Pro Wrestling, of course. If we're going to go into history here, which I've been writing a lot about lately on alliance-wrestling.com, NWA Pro Wrestling was the promotion that was basically what was the American version of what was left over from New Japan USA the first time around back in 2003. The Inoki Dojo featured guys like Fergal Devitt, Carl the Machine Gun Anderson, Mikey Nichols, the NWA British Commonwealth Championship, the CMLL Super Liga Championship, all before they crowned their own NWA Heritage Championship, which if you guys have been following Alliance-Wrestling.com, you'll know that Dave Marquez finally recovered that ancient relic from Japan, the NWA Heritage Championship. That was a belt that was worn by Scrap Iron Adam Pearce, Sean X-Pac Waltman, TJ Perkins, Ryan Taylor. Ryan Taylor's going to be debuting for New Japan of USA. The Lions break this Friday on New Japan World. You guys, if you're watching New Japan World, I would love to hear what your thoughts on the Lions break. Old school Oliver John, and then the title reign The title lineage ends with Atsushi Sawada, who took the title, and I believe the plan at the time was that he was going to defend that title for the Inoki Genome Federation, which was promoting as NWA Japan. At least that's what they were telling us stateside, but that never really came into fruition. And the belt disappeared after the earthquake in Fukushima, and all of a sudden the title returned some 8-9 years later after the NWA, or after Championship Wrestling from Hollywood created a new title. So we'll see how we'll see what's next for that. But I think the belt is going to be on Dave Marquez's shelf somewhere. I don't think we're going to see it again anytime soon in a ring. This is the NWA said, "What is the T?" Yes. What did Zicky Dice say? Don't keep us all in suspense. Wrestling with MMA, and for as silly as Aaron Shooter Stevens can be at times, he always puts well over 100% into every character and opportunity he's given. I was saying this on the Alliance Guys podcast, which was the podcast that was reviewing the NWA Power with my good friends DKM and former NWA World Junior Heavyweight Champion Kevin Frazier, that Aaron Stevens, I think, was a top-level heel. When you had our World's Heavyweight Championship, who was not clearly defined as a face or a heel, you had Aaron Stevens really, really embrace that heel role, and for the longest time was the only genuine heel that the NWA Power had. So I like him. I like his shtick. I like his in-ring ability. His matches with, or a match that he had with Trevor Murdoch was brutal. He was vicious, sadistic, everything a cold, calculating heel should be. So I would love to see more from Aaron Stevens, and I hope you guys do too. NWA Power and All Japan Pro Wrestling is what Willie Bowen was talking about, and that would be great. I mean, look, there's opportunity. The thing about working with the NWA as it stood 6 months ago, is that you're really only committing to having 3 dates a month with the NWA, if that. 2 TV tapings for NWA Power, 1 pay-per-view. I mean, they can literally work with anybody on that schedule. I mean, I know the WWE runs Monday nights, but that's about it. More of your comments. A certain person who he says is the person he has heat with and still isn't sure exactly why, has been talking to the dirt sheets and trying to paint a bad picture of him. The person is the only person he has heat with. Interesting. Chris Drummond says that he never saw Zicky long term in the NWA since he's a Seth Rollins pupil. Huh. Interesting. Zicky only had heat with one person in the NWA, and he has no idea why that person is going to the sheets. Interesting. I mean, look, man, I'm not a big dirt sheet kind of guy. We try to keep things, always have tried to keep things in a positive light. If people have heat, that's unfortunate, but that's also a byproduct of the business, and especially for someone like Zicky Dice, who came in and kind of picked up that TV title pretty quickly and really gained some notoriety quickly for the NWA. I'm sure that ruffled some people's feathers, but why he has heat, I would have no idea. Lamb says, by the way, Thunder Rosa and Tim Storm worked last weekend for SWE Fury Wrestling TV on Fight. She also brought the NWA Women's World title with her. That's pretty cool, man. Lamb, that's really cool. I did hear that Thunder Rosa was there. I didn't know Tim Storm was, but I know Tim Storm is good friends with James Beard, and James Beard, for the longest time, was a senior head official for the NWA, and I'm not surprised that Thunder Rosa, who lives in Texas, is appearing for SWE, and I'm not surprised Tim Storm is either. Sorry, getting caught in the comments here. Wrestling with MMA says, yes, Zicky Dice did say who it was. This is the NWA says, well, why are you leaving that part out? And then Terry McDermott says, I think Zicky is leaving just trying to stir up the fans. And SR. I don't even know who SR is. SR. SR. Ricky Starks, but he's not in the NWA anymore. Terry McDermott says he doesn't think Zicky's actually leaving, or he thinks that Zicky is leaving. I got confused. He doesn't think Zicky is leaving. He thinks it. He's just trying to stir up the fans. That wouldn't surprise me either, because we're still talking about Zicky Dice a heck of a lot more than we're talking about Aaron Stevens right now. And theoretically, both of them have the same trajectory. They're both champions for the NWA. Neither of them have had a title defense in a couple of months. Sal Renaro. I didn't even think about Sal. Yeah, and I agree with this is the NWA. Who would have heat with Sal Renaro? I don't get that either. But guys, hey, we've gone past our time. We're running late. So this is the time normally where we would go and watch whatever the NWA was putting on, but we don't have that. And that's a bummer. But you know what, guys? Stay tuned to my friends over at This is the NWA podcast. They're going to be on at 8 o'clock, which I guess is in about 2 hours. And they're going to be doing some after dark, which basically means they're going to be having a few sips of the bubbly and talking about the NWA, much like we do here. It's a great time. It's a fun show. It's just as interactive as we are here. And they do take a time to read your comments. They do take time to acknowledge their fans. And while you're at it, hit thumbs up if you like this video, because we certainly do appreciate the interacting with you guys who are watching the video. And again, I want to give all of those guys over at This is the NWA a high five, because honestly, the synergy that we have right now, we're working as one machine with two different teams, and I feel like that's awesome. Something that I don't think has happened in a very long time, if ever at all. You know, our whole thought process is we're promoting what we love. We're promoting the National Wrestling Alliance. As you can see above me right here, there's a link that says nwapodcast.decoapparel.com. Please visit that site. Make a purchase. Get yourself a hashtag NWA fam t-shirt. You'll look good in it. It's scientifically proven that you'll be 6% more sexy and appealing to the opposite sex while you're wearing that shirt. And yeah, that's going to do it. Again, you can follow us at the Alliance Blog on all social medias. Visit alliance-wrestling.com. Of course, hey, one more thing. We have an interview with two wrestlers coming out very, very soon. And that is hopefully Thursday. Danny Limelight, who is one of the breakout stars of the Lions Break, New Japan of USA. He takes on TJ Perkins this week on their programming. But before he does that, he actually interviewed with us about a week and a half ago. Can't wait for you guys to hear it, because he has some very interesting things to say, especially about the National Wrestling Alliance. And then Thunder Rosa, the interview is being produced right now. We're working on it. We should have that up probably Monday of next week, unless some way miraculously I'm able to power through and get it all up and ready much, much sooner. But that's all I have to plug right now. Again, visit alliance-wrestling.com, your number one source for news and information for the National Wrestling Alliance. My name is J Cal. This has been the pre-party, and we'll see you guys next week, same time, 2 o'clock Pacific, 5 o'clock Eastern. And thank you for checking us out, and we'll see you guys